Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I'll be covering the state of mitigation strategies against phishing attacks. This SLR is what I'm basing this presentation off of, along with my own experiences and knowledge and education. So, of the 248 articles the SLR mentions and covers, over 63% of the articles were somehow related to AI or focused on AI. And in this chart of classifications, as you can see, machine learning, neural networks, and deep learning make up 3 out of 6 of the main categories. And even within the others category, natural language processing and image recognition are a couple of the ones that stand out as well. Now, I have issue with this. This is an example of academia at its worst, because academia says that you must be state of the art and you must talk about the state of the art. So, what does that mean? All the researchers want to talk about AI. And what does that look like to me? That looks like a repairman with no other tools except a hammer in his hand. And in this way, the repairman thinks, I can go and repair this with a hammer to everything. He thinks he can repair everything with the hammer, even the stuff that shouldn't be. And that, so even if he shouldn't, he will try and repair something with the hammer. This is what I see as a very poor Hail Mary. So we get to the second point of the presentation. I'm here suggesting Cubes OS if you want a technological solution. And Cubes OS involves virtualization. What is virtualization? Well, let's talk about virtual machines. What is a virtual machine? Imagine your computer is making up and imagining another computer. Except it's real, kind of. It's kind of pretty real. And you can have multiple virtual machines with their own dedicated resources and such. And so long as your computer actually has that amount of resources, like let's say if you make a virtual machine with 2 gigs of RAM, and your computer has 16, well, guess what? You can make like 7 of those at least. Now, why do you want a virtual machine? Well, there's many reasons, but let's get to the point. A virtual machine basically has everything in its sandbox separated from other programs on the computer. So that means if you have an operating system that does literally nothing but virtual machines, those virtual machines are not going to be interacting with each other, especially if you tell them not to. And so you can have sensitive information on one virtual machine. You can have casual stuff like your Netflix login and YouTube login and all that stuff on another virtual machine. And then if you have you need to deal with a lot of dirty stuff that you don't quite trust to be on your other virtual machines, you make another one for that. And that extends to things like shady websites, files that may potentially be viruses. You go put it all in the dirty virtual machine. And yes, Cubes OS is real, it's free and open source, and I definitely recommend it, but we gotta keep moving. Why? Because this point, the lack of human-centric solutions in education, like 82% of security breaches, those are due to human error, and just as how all the researchers were focused on AI, only 13% of the other articles were human-centric, of like teaching and educating people. And this is pretty bad, not just because I hate people just trying to do things that are trendy, but because computer education and literacy is dropping. They're not teaching kids, for example, to use Windows computers or to get deeply invested in electronics. They give the simplest device possible with the simplest interface possible and teach no theory. So when you look at the screen, the kid looks at the screen and he says, I'll look at that, docs, slides, sheets, files, Google Drive. He thinks all these things are programs and that they are equal, but they're not equal. Many of these things are just links to websites, which mean they launch Google Chrome, and because you have Google Drive and files on the same device, that means that they don't understand the difference between cloud storage and local storage. They most likely won't, unless they have their own computers at home to use. And this is just a very, very small problem. In general, even people who do have access to Windows machines, Microsoft's trying to simplify everything, and they never really think about what hardware they have. When you go to a store, you see that they generally are trying to show less and less specs. So we need to return, re-educate, and revitalize. We need to teach people about the different RAM generations, what type of hard drives there are, what type of technologies, what operating systems are. Maybe show them Ubuntu and stuff like that. Schools, instead of using Chrome OS, if they truly hated to pay Microsoft a license fee, they should have installed Linux on all their computers. And that would have been free and open source, and they would have had an opportunity to actually teach kids about how to use computers. And that x86 CPU timeline, that's to teach people the timeline, the history of the components in their machines. Here's some motherboard standards they should know about that too. They got to learn about how are the files on the computer set up, how are they organized. And I'm not saying they need to know them by the letter, memorize it all, but they should know, because so that's when they see an email and it has the file, they need to know where they stored it, what that file was, what type of file that was, so that they don't fall for a scam, they don't click on mp3.exe or whatever. And maybe they should also learn some programming, right? Maybe they should learn some programming, because when you know how the memory is allocated in your computer, when you know how to write programs to begin with, you can think about how other programs work and how they may behave when interacting with files and other things. And just as Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I don't expect every person to be a computer wizard. The fault is not just the lack of education, but even the people who try, there's going to be people who can't go all the way and learn everything. And that's why we shouldn't force all aspects of computers on everyone. We should give employees security clearance based on their computer literacy. And one last point. We are at a stage that people are biting off more than they can chew. We've got this SLR. They said you can fix a hardware problem with software. They said those speculative execution attacks can be solved with software. You can't. And this is an example of when there's just so much computer knowledge out there that you will end up inevitably making a mistake. Engineers barely know their hardware at this point, or their software. They know the abstract, but they don't know the details. And those details, those fine details, are how the hackers and all that stuff are able to launch attacks. And the various technologies that we use have various backdoors and intentional security vulnerabilities. And so when you add AI, which many of us, many computer engineers and software engineers have not read about or studied, they will also suffer. It will be another layer of suffering, another layer of ignorance. We don't want more of that. And so, cut the fat, gird your loins, remove unnecessary software, remove unnecessary technologies, stick to something and learn it well. Always be careful even after learning. And remember, a computer is a tool, not a toy, and not magic either. Learn it well. And thank you for watching.